Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of the 700 Club. To say the least, we're delighted you're with us. Did you watch any of the, what were the Oscars?
Yes, no. Yes and no.
Yes.
Yes,
you know,
they
had
Oscars,
a nice
no,
feature.
I
thought it was kind of cute. They had a group of people in an adjoining theater that were just looking at a regular movie, and they took some of the stars and they had a hot dog throwing machine, and they threw hot dogs out into the audience to give them all something to eat.
Wow.
I mean,
classy. Sorry.
But they like those weird things, like the shape of water. I mean, come on. That was won the Oscar. I mean, it's weird. I mean, if it's weird or, you know, gay or whatever, they seem to like those things. But I don't think the audience is all that important. Well, all right, let's get down to the news. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is at the White House today, and much of the media focus will be on the peace process with the Palestinians. But the two leaders will also be talking about the growing threat from the nation of Iran.
Well, Netanyahu will be speaking to supporters of Israel while he's in Washington this week, along with Vice President Mike Pence and UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. Iran will be at the top of the agenda. Jenna Browder brings us the story from Washington.
A lot is on the table for President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Most importantly, Iran's growing influence in the Middle East. As he left Israel for the United States, Netanyahu called this a very important visit, and Trump a close friend of Israel. The two leaders are expected to talk about President Obama's nuclear agreement with Iran, something they and many lawmakers consider a bad deal.
The Prime Minister makes a very compelling case that the Iranian nuclear agreement as is not in the interest of anyone in the world other than Iran.
Senator Lindsey Graham, on a recent trip to Israel, also warned about Iran's growing military and political influence in the Middle East, even close to Israel itself.
I am hoping that the Trump administration, who has been a great ally of Israel, has unleashed our military against ISIL, will look longer and harder in cooperation with the international community to stop what I think is a dangerous advancement by Iran throughout the region. We will all regret allowing Iran to run rampant, and the sooner we can deal with this, the better.
Netanyahu also wants Trump to attend the opening of the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem that's set for May, tied into the 70th anniversary of the founding of modern Israel. Palestinians oppose the embassy move, one of the major complications, as the Trump team tries to come up with a peace deal. Adding to the situation, Trump's point man, Jared Kushner, has lost his top-secret security clearance. Back in Israel, Netanyahu is facing allegations of corruption, police arriving at his residence Friday to question him over a bribery scandal. Both he and Trump, who's dealing with the Russia investigation, say they're not concerned. Netanyahu's main focus at this pro-Israel conference will be on the threat from Iran. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thanks, Jenna. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, we have to face the fact that Iran is a bad actor. They have been fomenting revolution. They have been the source of funds for Hezbollah and other radical groups. And they are looking to have a so-called caliphate or a hegemony all the way across a wide swath of territory that would go from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean. They're dangerous, and the sooner or later we're going to have to deal with it. We can't just allow that cancer to grow and them to continue to take the huge amounts of money they have at their disposal and use it to fund groups. You know, there was an Iranian-backed drone that came into Israeli airspace from Syria, but it was from Iran. And here it's in Israel, and they shot it down, but as a drone, but it meant that that could carry some kind of nuclear weapon. Iran has said over and over again that they want to destroy Israel. They've made no secret about it. So anyhow, it's something that we need to work on. Well, President Trump is standing by one of his recent decisions that's been in the headlines to impose new tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to say this real clearly. I am for free trade, and I think the idea of penalizing all the people that use steel, you know, everybody sooner or later will use steel. We all use steel. Steel's in everything. So who do we penalize when we put tariffs on imported steel? We don't hurt the people who make the steel because they're so efficient. There was an editorial today about how efficient. There's a plant in Austria that has very few people and very modern technology to turn out their steel products. So why in the world would we put tariff on imported steel and aluminum when all the consumers in America will get hurt by it? That is not a smart move. Ephraim.
Well, Pat, the president defended his new tariff in a tweet Sunday, saying we are on the losing side of almost all trade deals. Our friends and enemies have taken advantage of the U.S. for many years. Our steel and aluminum industries are dead. Sorry, it's time for a change. Make America great again. Main economists and politicians have criticized the president's move, saying it will mean higher prices. But the president's supporters are disputing that.
At least as far as anyone can tell, there wasn't a great deal of consultation outside of the Commerce Department, and even there was significant dissent and surprise, as I understand it. I mean, this is a very, very important decision, and it's one that could have long-term ramifications.
If you look at a 10% tariff on aluminum, 6-pack of beer or Coke, that's $1.50. If you look at the other end of the spectrum, Boeing 777. It's one of the best airliners ever made. It's a $330 million aircraft. We're talking about an increase in costs at the worst of $25,000. So when you're talking about these massive costs or whatever as a fact, it's not.
Some congressional Republicans have urged the president to rethink the impact the tariffs could have. Some liberal Democrats think they may have a campaign issue to use against Republicans in this fall's congressional elections. President Trump's tax cut. Some high-profile liberals are calling for the tax cuts to be repealed just 2 months after President Trump signed them into law. Those Democrats are betting big that repealing the tax cuts will give them a clear populist message. But others, including Democrats in red states, aren't sure it's a good strategy. And even those who do want to get rid of the tax cuts say they'd only repeal certain parts, saying tax breaks for billionaires and large corporations must go. The tax cut plan is likely to be a central issue for both parties in this year's midterms. Pat?
Well, if I were the president, I'd be running on the fact that I have put money into your paycheck, that your stock portfolio was up, that your 401s are up, that everything you've got is up, and you're actually getting more money in that paycheck because you're paying lower taxes. I tell you, if I were a Republican strategist, I'd be, rubbing my hands in glee. The Democrats would be such fools as to run against the tax cut. Can you imagine a campaign where one guy says, I'm going to raise your taxes, and the other was, I'm going to keep your tax cuts and make it easier for you? Can you imagine where the voters are going to go? I mean, oh, good grief, how foolish can you get? Ephraim.
Pat, California could soon become the first state to require its university health care centers to offer abortion pills to students. But pro-life advocates fear the move could only encourage abortion among those students. Heather Sells brings us the story.
None of the University of California or Cal State campuses currently offer abortion services on campus, but this bill would change that.
UC San Francisco estimates more than 1,000 California college students get an abortion each month, adding up to some 12,000 a year. In a recent survey, most campus health centers indicated they present all options to pregnant students. But anti-abortion advocates believe otherwise.
We have found that many times when a woman finds out that she's pregnant on campus, she doesn't know where to turn, and abortion is presented as the easiest solution.
Abortion advocates, on the other hand, say it's too hard for college students to choose abortion, arguing that forcing them to go to off-campus sites like Planned Parenthood clinics is a barrier. That's why they're pushing State Bill 320 to make the pill freely available and eliminate any transportation problems. While state senators have already passed the bill, university administrators worry about paying for it. They fear extra costs for liability insurance, medical training, and round-the-clock phone support for emergencies. Students for Life share the concern, especially when it comes to women's health and well-being.
We're concerned that she would be taking this pill on campus and not be able to distinguish a common side effect versus an emergency, versus needing emergency care.
If this bill passes, it would set a precedent, as no other state currently forces its campus health centers to offer abortion services. Reporting in San Diego, Heather Sell, CBN News.
Eye-opening report. Pat?
Thank you very much. Did you notice the wind in the last weekend?
Yes, of course.
Did any of the trees in your yard fall down? Or?
Not in my yard, but my neighbor's.
The neighbors' trees?
A tree fell down. Well, we live in an area that was a former woods, so.
Yeah, but even so.
Even so. Mm-hmm.
Well, in Washington, I think they told government workers they didn't have to come to work because it was so dangerous.
Yeah, and well, planes, I think, also over the weekend were not flying.
Oh, over 1,000 flights canceled in New York, particularly. I mean,
yes.
What do they call it? A blast cyclone? It was just some kind of a weird storm.
I don't know, but it was.
Oh, what? Somebody's talking to me here. Say it again. I still didn't hear you.
Yeah,
bomb cyclone. I'm sorry, bomb cyclone. All right,
there was a lot of damage, and you know.
Well, there's one coming, another one. Bomb cyclone. It'll hit the Northeast. It hit a swath all the way up to the East Coast, especially on I-95. And Washington, as I say, the workers were told you don't have to come to work because the power lines were down, trees were down. But another one coming. Yeah. Another one coming. Here's Ephraim with that story.
Pat, as you said, another major winter storm could be making its way to the East Coast and parts of the Midwest. States like New York, Maryland, and Pennsylvania are still recovering from last week's nor'easter. It brought heavy floods, strong winds, and heavy snow in some areas. And it left more than 1.5 million homes and businesses without power. But forecasters say people should be getting ready for another storm that could hit in the next few days, dropping between 6 to 12 inches of snow in Montana as it moves across the U.S. to the Midwest and the Northeast. Pat?
Well, that's what happens when you have global warming. It gets hotter. And
well, sort of, in some places. I don't know.
So the weather is screwy. It really is. I mean, what are we going to say?
Well, it's intense at best. Yeah.
All right. Well, we've got a story coming up now that you wouldn't believe. You can imagine what happened in the newsrooms of the liberal media when the election was showing that Trump was winning. Yeah. You know, we forecast here, our guys went out and we did a survey state by state, and I was bold to say that Trump was going to win because of certain states that he was going to carry.